Good evening and welcome to the Monday, October 12th, Muscatine Community School District Board of Education meeting. We all did enter into the building with our masks on per what is not only safe for our community, but the request of City Hall of where we're at. Some of us have chosen to go ahead and take our masks off, but we are properly socially distanced this evening. So, Madam Secretary, would you take roll and help us determine a quorum, please?
Here.
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 Thank you. We have started in the last several months, really when COVID started, by asking different student and community groups to lead the Board of Education in the Pledge of Allegiance. And tonight, I'm very excited to say that we have, via pre-recorded means, we have the Muskie varsity football team, and they will be leading us in the pledge tonight. So whoever's in charge of the film, if they will kick that off, and we will stand and join them. We so appreciate the football team in leading us tonight. We have several groups lined up throughout the rest of the year, and we still have spots open. So if anybody is dying to highlight their activity or class, and you would reach out to Lisa Bond, our board secretary, that would be amazing. But we enjoy being able to highlight our students. Next on our agenda is our MHS Student Council update.
Hi, my name is Anna Sparks, and I'm the Vice President of Student Council this year. First, we want to talk about Homecoming Week. So Homecoming Week was a huge success, especially considering the altercations we had to make, considering everything that's going on this year. Aside from Homecoming Dance, we were able to have all of our usual events in one form or another, and TD and Kaylin Salyers were crowned Homecoming King and Queen at Thursday's outdoor coronation after the parade. The Powder Puff game was a success. The juniors won in an upset in the last minute of the game, and we were able to raise $750 in total from this event, and all proceeds went to the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. Currently, we are working on putting together some kind of fall festival themed event to be held at the end of the month for high schoolers, since we didn't get to have homecoming, like the dance this year. We're still working out the details and specifics of exactly what it will entail. We are currently working with administration to put all of the proper safety measures in place. Our annual Hunger Drive events are starting next month. Held November 5th in the MHS gym will be the boys volleyball handball tournament, and all proceeds from the Hunger Drive will go to our local MCSA. The annual Mr. Muscatine pageant will be held after school again this year. It will be held November 12th at 6:30 at MHS. Information on this event will be advertised in early November, and tickets will go on sale ahead of time. As with all of our activities, social distancing precautions will be put in place. If the holiday stroll happens also, we also plan on participating in it in some way. Do you have any questions? All right, thank you.
Anna, thank you for coming in tonight, and we appreciate everything the Student Council is doing this year, and especially all the new ways you're working to find to do things. Who would ever thought we would say, if we have this holiday stroll, and yet here we are. So thank you, and thank you to your peers for all the fundraising efforts that you've done.
Thank you, guys.
Next on our agenda is our Citizen Speaks portion of the agenda. If there's anyone in the audience that would like to address the board, now is the time to do that. We ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes and that you also state your name and address for the record. The easiest way to have a dialogue with any board member is to reach out either via email or phone call. So please know that during this portion of the meeting, we're not able to engage in conversation, but certainly willing to hear anyone that is here. And all is quiet in the gallery. All right, we'll keep cruising along then. Next up is under our board targets and goals report. We have a couple of different sections. So under the first one is students will graduate prepared for a post-secondary options. We have a portrait of a Muskie graduate. And I don't know, Clint, are you going to kick us off, or is Terry going to kick us off?
Well, Terry's going to come up and talk a little bit, but I'll start kicking that conversation off. I think Mr. Hoganson's been working with a number of administrators and staff at the high school, as well as with Joelle and I, in getting this process started. And really, when you start talking about programs, electives, course offerings, graduation requirements, in order to really have that conversation, we need to back up and have this conversation first. So this is a process that he'll talk through, but I think it's the start of a lot of additional conversations and working forward from there. So with that, Terry, I'll turn it over to you to talk a little bit more about it.
Hello, everyone. The portrait of a graduate, you can see on the slide, is basically our opportunity to take a look at kind of beginning with the end in mind again. We're starting with what we want a graduate to look like from all aspects. So we know that a number of our students go on to enter post-secondary in a number of ways. Some are just career-oriented, some are the trades, some are wanting a AA degree, some want a 4-year. And so our goal is to get people in the conversation. So the portrait of a graduate represents our vision of what we want to take a look at for our students, what they should be able to do, produce, and be able to be as citizens and potential, employees one day, hopefully people in this community, because we have some wonderful students that would be very employable, very positive in our educational, from our educational experience, to stay in our community and be a part of us. We are the knowledge and skills and attitudes of the high school graduate. We want to talk with our community members. We want to bring in people on October 27th and 28th. They will be at the high school in person on the 27th. It'll go from 6:30 till 8:30. We have a number of stakeholder groups that we're inviting in at that time to talk with us about what their vision is of what a graduate would look like for Muscatine High School. Those that don't want to attend or can't attend in person will have the opportunity to participate on Wednesday, October 27th from 6:30 till 8:30, same time. And so again, we will invite them into that conversation to make sure that we hear voices from around the community, so it's not just a one perspective thing. It's not just our school staff or people making a decision. We're going to listen to what everybody wants us to say about what is relevant for our students to be able to do. So our purpose is to take a look at and what are the skills that each graduate will need to be successful, regardless of what their post-secondary aspirations are. We want to prioritize those skills. We want to make sure that those skills are relevant again, and that we make sure that we're focusing keenly on those, because what we focus on tightly gets done and gets done well. And then we want to ask, what are we doing well? And we know that at the high school we have a number of students. We just saw one up here talking with you that is doing very well. But what are some areas we can improve on? What are things that we can support? What are ways we can look at education maybe a little differently to do that? So we're very excited about the fact that we're going to be engaging a large number of people in this conversation. We've been working behind the scenes to set up the format and the process to try and make sure that everything is kind of fair and equitable and everybody has a voice in the conversation. Our staff has been informed about that. Our district leadership team has been informed. Today, as part of our staff meeting, all staff were advised as to what our Portrait of a Graduate process is and what we're looking at trying to accomplish. Are there questions that you have about this that I can try to answer for you?
Well, I guess the only question I really have is, when you're saying about the community, does that include us to be able to come to that?
I believe that everybody in this room is going to be invited to that, to be in that dialogue. Again, the more well-rounded our conversation is from all different aspects, the better off the conversation's going to be.
I think we'll get some invites sent out. We'll just have to be careful if we get more than 3 that we would post it as a board meeting.
Who else are we inviting? So what would we?
There's a long list of parents, students, community, business, city, the community college.
Former students from the high school. We worked with Kim Warren through AIM to kind of go through some of those businesses. There's some from, trying to think.
It is just an extensive list of individuals from corporate sectors to educational sectors, community sectors. Again, trying to get as many different voices from many different perspectives as possible so that we can put that into the conversation.
I think the advantage of having an in-person and an online, a virtual session, is that we need to kind of manage that in-person just because of size and groupings and so on. But the virtual one, that's something that we can get out there and have, more people attend that. Not as necessarily limited in terms of physical space.
And I'm assuming there'll be more than one portrait? There'll be portraits, or will there just be a single view? Will there just be one view, or will there be like a college track view and a career view? Or will there only be one portrait of a graduate?
I think that'll be part of the conversation. Typically, you have one document that has that vision statement of what we want our kids, regardless of what track they go down. And I think personally for me, it's that we prepare kids to make the choice. That we've done a good job preparing them that they have the opportunity to choose this or the opportunity to choose this and the opportunity to choose that, whatever that might be. And that's always the end goal.
Anything else? I just want to make sure that I'm not cutting anybody off from any questions they want. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Terry. That takes us to then our second and our third board goals, as they're stated, which is Muscatine schools will utilize resources effectively and equitably, and students will learn in a positive and supportive environment. So I think next up is our MHS STEM open house and Susan Clark Junior High open house information.
Hello, everybody. So in front of you is a flyer that we created today in preparation for next Tuesday's open house at Muscatine High School to celebrate the STEM wing. So Terry and I had talked a couple weeks ago, and we figured that this date would be best given the nature of the week with conferences going on. And the thought is to have from 6:30 to 7, a half hour that is available for folks from the Roy J. Carver Charitable Trust to come through. And then from 7 to 7:30, open to the public. And as you can see on the flyer, face coverings required, social distancing. By then, the VR classrooms that are part of the STEM wing will be up and running. Ryan and Scott were updating me on that. The computers came in today, and that was the last piece. So that'll be all set and ready to go. The governor will be invited, along with everybody that's in this room, certainly. And then as far as the public portion of it, like I said, I don't anticipate a large turnout, given the nature of, folks not being able to come into the building. That could change, but we'll be prepared either way. I think we're going to have a couple of students in place, everybody spaced out and socially distanced. For the Susan Clark Junior High Open House, we're tentatively looking at a date of Tuesday, November 17th, 5:30 to 7:30. I meet with Chris tomorrow to talk more about that. I had a good conversation with Mary Wildermuth today, who's been a big force behind that and certainly wants to be part of that open house. That week in November is American Education Week, so it seems like a great opportunity to do that and to celebrate the fact that we have two schools coming together to forge ahead as one. I had a great chat with Jen Fridley, the assistant principal, and it's definitely on her list of things to celebrate. So we'll look to get some more media around that. I know that when the name change was made, there was a little bit of press, but I think we can do more. There's since been a really nice video put together that we hope to show you at a future meeting that's about 7 minutes long. There's a plaque in the entryway. There's a TV right there that plays the video, and then a few other things that they want to do to really celebrate that story, including having some leaders from across the state being there as well. So those are two things that we're working on. And again, the STEM wing is good to go for next Tuesday, and I'll hope to get a graphic and invite made up for the Susan Clark one. Any questions or feedback?
Tony, I just have one comment, not question.
Sure.
With Susan Clark Open House, is it possible to get the Alexander Clark group in town engaged in
Yeah,
this
so
too?
that's a great question, John. So yeah, when I talked today to, now her name's escaping me, when I talked to Mary, we spoke about that, and she's going to engage that group along with some other folks across the state that I think were supporters of that change. So I'm going to work closely with her and Chris and our team to make sure that we're getting the word out. And I think a 2-hour window, again, gives us enough time to space people out. I can't forecast what the turnout will be like, but I'd rather have a little bit more time than not. And that is a really big deal, just like the STEM wing is a big deal. This is as well. So,
Thank you.
yes, sir. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony. Next up is our Muskie Return to Learn update.
We have a number of items to update you on. Some of them are kind of return conversations from previous meetings, and also some additional items just through our conversation that we felt would be important to bring to you tonight. With that, I'll turn it over to Joelle to start us through.
Okay, so the first slide that I wanted to go over was the attendance slide. What I provided for you the first 40 days over the past, since 2016, so that you can see in your packet and up here on this slide that what our chronic absenteeism rate has been for those first 40 days. And so obviously we haven't been in school 40 days yet, and 5 days actually makes a pretty big difference, but I wanted to at least get this out in front of you. We've been in school 35 days, and so I've compiled with Gwen our attendance data here for you to see for each school and level. And so you can see that, I guess I don't know, I'll probably go over it because I know you're kind of further away. At the elementary level, we do have an increase in the amount of students with a chronic absenteeism rate. At the secondary, at the Susan Clark Junior High, last year they were at Central and West, but if you would combine those two together, we're almost right exactly where they have been in the past. And at the high school, we're just from last year at 17.8%, we are up to 24.5% at the high school level. So I did ask Gwen today, we were kind of working through of those chronic attendance rates, how many of those are sick or excused or COVID related, and then how many of them are not present or unexcused, so that we could kind of just look at the different data. And we've mostly focused, I have that data for every grade or every school. And it's the excused and sickness is higher, obviously, than the not present and unexcused, which is good, except for at the junior high and high school. So then we broke that down even further, and we started looking at the days that kids were in person and the days they were remote to see if if there was a difference in those two pieces, because we know, remember, kids were having a hard time checking in and forgetting. But what we found was that there's actually at the junior high, there was a 7% increase on remote days for those students that are fell in that chronic category. And at the high school, there was a 3% increase on remote days. And that is down from where we were. I know at the junior high and high school level, they've been putting lots of things in place to address that. They did meet with all of the students about checking in for remote. At the junior high level, I know they called them in and worked with them just individually to help make sure they knew how to do it. They've been sending letters. They've done home visits. I think at the high school level and junior high level, they've done close to 150 home visits to different families and reaching out to them. At the elementary level, they've done approximately 40 home visits to families. And then in addition, I know Terry's going to be talking about this later, the high school is working on putting in some added support for some of our students who may need support with attendance or academics. And so I know he's going to be talking about that coming up. But that's just an overview of attendance and where we are at this time. I didn't know if you had any questions about attendance before I moved on.
I do a little bit, Joelle.
Uh-huh.
So I'm not sure, the MCSD number looks low, given that the elementary, it's almost double in most cases, if not more than that, at the elementary school level. And then I think the junior high, you don't add them together. I think it's the average of the two from the previous year. So I think it's double at the junior high as well, because those are percentages.
If you would put Central and West together, they were at, West was at 20.2 and Central was at 11.9 last year.
Yeah, but I don't think you add them. I think you take the average of that, because they're percentages.
You'd have to add the populations together
Yeah.
and add
And then,
the
okay,
student
yeah,
and then
that's probably
divide,
true.
so.
Yeah,
So I think
would
it's
probably
15, it's probably 15 last
it's
year.
probably
somewhere
higher
in the
than, yeah.
middle.
quite a bit
30%.
higher.
It
Yeah.
looks about the same as the elementary.
Yeah,
It
that's
just
true.
looks like it's
Yes.
about double.
Yeah. Well, and, I think of that, breaking it down, when we look at the numbers of students who are excused or sick, like, I can go through these or provide this data for you at a later time, but for example, at Franklin, 64% of the absences are due, 64%, I gotta make sure I say this right, or Gwen, 64% of the codes are sick and excused, and 36% are not present. And, at Grants, it's 82% excused and sick, and 18% not present. So I think, the fact that we are at the elementary level, we see kids every single day, and so when they're going home, with symptoms, it's probably, they're checking out of the office, they're calling in with nurses. So I think those rates are just higher around sickness. At the junior high and high school, I know that they are working to address some of that attendance issue. They're just came up with an idea, and Terry can probably jump in, to push the check-in time from 9 in the morning until noon to give kids a little bit more flexibility with that check-in time. Some of them just don't check in by 9, and then they're like, oh, I forgot, and then they, don't do it. So we're hoping to push that time back to just allow a little more flexibility. So yeah, it's definitely higher, but when you do break it down, it is a lot higher around excused and sicknesses versus just not present and
Joelle,
and
I got a
unexcused.
question along the lines of, and I'm not quite sure if it's because if they push the button or not, but I have talked to several on the junior high level, and they indicated to me that, and it was actually kind of refreshing in a way, when they got up, they made sure that they got their work done. And I'm like, oh, because I just figured they might stay up, later at night so they sleep in the morning or something, right? But no, they wanted to get their work done, which also meant means that they got whatever that required work done there was lots of extra free time then in the afternoon.
Right.
And then being home when their parents may not be home and stuff.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of like, what are the type of things maybe to balance that or keep them engaged or, things
Right.
like that.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think that some of the kids will get their work done the night before. Some of them will get up in the morning, some sleep in and get it done. We're kind of looking for that balance for kids, for homework. And, based on that survey that we had the other day, we're trying to kind of hit that sweet spot and still allow for differentiation for kids, because we know we have kids that still need supports, and yet we have kids that need acceleration as well. So, I think it's 5 weeks in. I think teachers are kind of adjusting, and kids are learning and adjusting, and I think it will balance out. So,
I think that goes back to our survey data as well. When you asked parents and students, how much work they were getting for a majority, so it was probably 65-70% where it was just right.
Yeah.
You had about 15 to 20 that it was too much, 15 to 20 was not enough. So when you're getting that kind of response, you're probably in a pretty good spot. Then it becomes, how do we provide supports for those students where it's too much? And how do we provide supports and enrichment for those that need more?
Right, thank you.
I know that attendance is I know Terry can speak that, and all the principals, they meet every single week, and it's a constant, work in progress. We have a lot of parents who are working, during the day, and so some of the kids aren't, always supervised for schoolwork and naps and attendance and things like that. So the principals are out working with families, counselors, we have navigators. That it's just a priority in all the schools of how we can continually address this, so.
Joel, do you feel that it's improving? That what we're trying to do is improving attendance?
Mm-hmm.
And do you see a correlation with the improved attendance with improved grades and improved learning?
Yeah.
Scrap the grades. I don't
Yeah.
want to get into a grade. But
Yeah.
do you think the kids are learning because they are attending?
Right.
That's my biggest.
Well, I think we always know if kids are in school or with their teacher, that it's better to have them there than not. I do know that we've had many kids that, they've struggled with, or parents with remote learning. And for those kids, we've been trying to make adjustments by, even having them come back to school if it just wasn't a fit or it was too hard. And principals have been meeting, with families and trying to adjust, and then working with teachers if they're struggling as well. So, yeah, I think always when the kids are present, they'll do better, right?
Joel, also, I'm just like thinking also, could it be the percentages are going up a little bit, not a little bit in some cases, a little bit, not just enough to say, but because we are keeping also sixth grade now, we have bigger population in elementary schools than years before. So that also affects the percentage too. So that can be also one of the reasons why you are seeing that, some of that jump. I'm not saying that's the only reason, but that could be one of the reasons too.
Well, and two, and it's that way for all of this data, so it's not like it's different just this year, but to be on the chronic it's 3.5 days of absences. And so obviously as days are added to the calendar, that list gets smaller and smaller, we hope, is our goal. But
Which also, by the way, looking back on the 219, 220 part of it, a good portion of those actually increased from 218 already. And so when we say, of course, we've got an increase of absenteeism now, that means last year we were already starting a trend of some problems with that. And I'm assuming that we had already started to try to address some of those before this year came up with all of this.
well, prior to this year, have been a principal for the past 5 years, and I would say, attendance is just, it's an everyday work. It's, it's reaching out to families. It's a couple hours of, tracking down students, checking in on them, seeing how we can support families. So I think attendance is just one of those things that we have to continually work on, even if it's not a pandemic. It's something that we have to address all the time. Mhm.
Thank you.
And, to me, looking at this, it's not just about the school either. The amount of work that goes into all of that every day by the staff is, I'm sure it's percentages of time that you should have teaching instead of trying to get kids to school. So I think we need to address it more from a community standpoint, an educational standpoint, maybe even a marketing standpoint. We had a little bit of that. Attendance is important and all that, but I think we really need to show, because if this, and I agree, the beginning of the year, hopefully it gets better throughout the year, but this is 1 out of 4, 1 out of 5 of our students are chronically absent in the first 5 weeks of school. We've talked here at the board level how chronic absenteeism affects grades, affects career, job opportunities, and how important that is. And I don't think it's just, I applaud the teachers and the staff for what they do to get those kids to school, but I think we have to address it in a much broader sense from a community standpoint.
I would agree. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and go on. So one of the things that the high school, this is Mr. Hoganson, will be up again to kind of share a little bit about some supports that they're looking at putting in place for our high school students.
This originated, we knew that this was a need to try and support our kids during this new normal of theirs, and that so many are adjusting to the different programming models that are out there. And in doing that, we realized that some students are struggling just with the fact that the routines, their get up every day and go somewhere and do what they're supposed to be doing thing doesn't exist anymore. They have to be self-motivated to do that. They have to be self-disciplined. And, brain research will tell you that at this age, that's a real challenge. And that's not a joke in any way or form. That's very serious. At this age has trouble with those kinds of processing and that kind of planning. And so Mr. Christopher actually called up and said, what can we do? And at that point, then we started convening. We started convening our student services. We started convening our administrative team. We started convening some of our teachers and said, let's brainstorm. Let's think about how we can do this and who can offer it. So what we came up with was that there is a way for us to invite 50 students a day, 100 students over a A-B day schedule, in to receive extra support. We talked about whether it should be all day or half day. And we felt that all day to have students come in and they wouldn't have direct contact with the kind of a teacher per se may not be motivating to them. So if we did it in the morning, they could still get a breakfast and a lunch, which we feel is kind of an important thing for our students to be able to have, and that we would provide them with the opportunity to come in and get the support from a couple different areas. One would be our ALC, Alternative Learning Center individual, and another one would be from our Success Center. And then what we would do is put word out to all of the teachers who have these students that would be coming in on those days, saying these students will be in attendance today, and if you want to drop by and offer some help or just some guidance or some clarifications for them, again, trying to create those connections back on their days. We also felt that 4 days a week were manageable. I have to give a shout out to Ryan, who is trying to make busing work in the middle of the day for us to do this. This is a very, this is an obstacle to overcome. And one of the gifts that we kind of came up with was not having it on Friday, because Fridays were such high usage days for bus drivers and other capacities. So that was another factor that went into this. But what we really feel is that students will be able to come in. We would have them on a set schedule. They just can't just flow in and flow out. We feel there's some level of security issues and safety that we always have to maintain, so that we have schedules set up for them. They will be coming in. They will receive any extra support on those for the work that they need to complete. And we are, at the present time, sending out invitations to and making personal phone calls to students that would qualify in any capacity. And so we're trying to reach out as much as we can to do an invitation to have them come in and offer the parents an opportunity to say, we can offer 4 days a week. Your student would be in class, in a building, consistent routines with certified teachers to support them. So that's kind of it in a kind of a nutshell. But what have I not answered for you that you'd like to ask?
When do you anticipate starting this program?
That was a great question, because we are like trying to push this as fast as we can. Again, I'm going to give some credit to the student services. They said, why are we waiting for a certain number to get this started? Let's start inviting, and as they're available, let's bring them in. So we could already have some tomorrow that are starting to come in, and we have the teachers ready. We actually have the ability to expand room and space to accommodate social distancing needs if we get to those numbers. So, but right now, we won't have those numbers, but we are in preparation for that.
And this is still voluntary? I mean,
Yes,
you're
this is-
asking, so they're committing to it, and it's still a voluntary thing, not
Yes.
you have to do this.
It's voluntary, and we also are putting the stipulation in that there will probably be other students that want these spots if you don't. And so if you don't come in regularly, if you're not showing up, we need to have some level of consistency with this for everybody's sake. And so that's part of the deal also. I think I'm getting just slightly ahead of the curve on this, but we're also in conversation about special education potentially being able to do this also. But there's some extra nuances that have to be worked out on that. But I'm very excited at the fact that we're having some groundswell about maybe how we can make this happen. Again, another group of students coming in more consistently. I think it just benefits everybody.
Is 100 spots enough, Terry?
It was based on the availability of staff and what we have by spacing and being able to fit in. I will tell you what, though, if we have a bigger demand than 100, we will find a way to meet that need. But for right now, that seems to be a very reasonable number for us to try to approach and invite in. And again, sort of test market it as we're going along and make sure that we're doing it right for kids' sake.
I think from a percentage standpoint too, hitting about 15% of your population would put you in kind of that second tier of intervention support. So I think right now that's probably a good target number, and hopefully we can fill that, right? And then if, like Terry
Sure,
said,
we'll
if we
try.
need to grow beyond that, we'll find a way.
Is this something that we were looking at for the junior high level too in the future?
So we've had initial conversations with the high school, but I think it's a model that we can continue to talk about, and Ryan will have to wrap his mind around that as well in terms of how we do that. So, and again, I think that part of that is, in putting this together, the high school staff got together and had conversations, say, how can we make this work? I think Susan Clark needs to do the same thing. It may look a little bit different, but we have a model that we've gotten to start at the high school and something they can build from or take in a different direction.
So this is hybrid. What about virtual learners and at-risk students there?
So that becomes more of a challenge, and what's happening a lot of times is when we do get students who are really struggling, that's when we start having the conversation about, are there ways we can bring you back? And I know that's happening with principals and with parents, and has been from kind of early on.
Terry, just quick question, because as I'm looking at the criteria here, who are at risk and struggling, how would you define that? I mean, like, how would you pick, let's say, student A and not B?
We look at the criteria that make students kind of at risk, and there's qualifications dealing with the students that are non-attenders, students that don't have family members that have graduated. We look at all sorts of factors as to what those are. We have identifiers for those that come to us. We also have those that have come to us from from the 8th grade level to the freshman year that we're looking at. Basically, any student that's failing consistently across the board puts themselves in that context and is someone that we would be looking at.
Thank you.
Okay, the next one is just a brief teaching and learning update. And so I provided a little handout for you just so you are aware of what's taking place this month. This Wednesday, we have a 2-hour early dismissal, and teachers from pre-K-12 will be working together in their PLCs and focusing on lessons and teaching. I guess throughout the month of October and November, we are continuing to support teachers in the technology realm. So they've moved into Smart Suite training at the elementary level to help support teachers. And then at the junior high and high school, I know they were working a lot on videos still and making videos. That was a request that came back on our feedback. So Tristan and the technology instructional coaches are working with teachers as needed. Also, this month we have teacher in-service on October 26th, and that's an all-day in-service, and that is set aside for buildings to have choice around meeting the needs of the teachers. And so at the Muskie Early Learning Center, they're going to be working on some GOLDS assessment. At the elementary level, they'll be focusing on some 95% review and time to work together and teacher teams. At Susan Clark Junior High, their teachers have put together some needs that they would like to focus on, and so they set those up in Ed Camp sessions for teachers. And then at the high school, teachers will have the day to also work in PLCs together. So that is October 26th. At the end of each early out, I'll be asking teachers to give us feedback again each month on how we can continue to make adjustments to meet their needs. And so when I get that back in October, I'll have that data for you for the November meeting, so you can look at that. Our goal is to, ask for feedback each month and make adjustments as needed. Conferences are coming up, and those will be held virtually unless a parent requests an in-person or a phone conference. Aspire interim assessments are starting for students. And then we just completed elementary FAST assessments, and I did provide those scores for you just so you could have an overview. I'll see if I can pull those up here. Oops. Scott, I don't know why it won't let me pull down. I could just go over those with you. So basically, the first page in purple kind of goes over a little bit of all of our benchmark scores. Sorry, every time I pull down, it pulls that up. At the kindergarten through first grade level, these are benchmark scores according to FastBridge. And so typically when we look at scores of classes, we'd like to see them around 80%. And that is kind of a healthy indicator of core. And so coming in this year, you can see that at the kindergarten through first grade level, we have scores that range from 32% up to 71% for K1. And at the second through sixth grade, we have scores that range from 43% up to 69% as a total. So individually, you can see the different grade levels. I think one note on here is that when you look at our first grade across every school, they're significantly lower than the other grade levels. And so based on that, we've put together some training for teachers around foundational skills on that in-service day, just to give some extra support around meeting the needs of those students. If you turn to the back page, I wanted to kind of just show you a quick comparison of where we've come in the past. So last year in the fall when we started school, the kindergartners were coming in around 64% at benchmark, and this year they're at 60%. If you look at first grade, you can see a significant change in our data. Last year, students were coming in at about 69% proficient, and this year they're coming in at 34% proficient. Second grade at 55%, 54%, and in the fall this year at 53. So you can see that across, the board here in first grade, our students are really below where we would like to see them. I think that why that happened is that at the end of kindergarten, students are really focused on that phonemic awareness piece and start bridging to phonics and really being able to put those phonemic awareness skills into words, and the kids missed that big piece of their learning. And so the first grade teachers are going to have to, it's kind of what we've been talking about, that just-in-time approach. They're going to have to go back and look at some of those skills that kids missed in kindergarten. And so for some teachers, that might be something different than they've done. And so we've been working on putting together training for them on that day if they need it to be able to go and get some support around that. I did put in a comparison so that you can see how Muscatine, this is just looking at overall all of our K-6 students and the percent at benchmark. In Muscatine, we have about 56% of our students at benchmark. If you look at our Mississippi Bend AEA, they have about 62% at benchmark. And with the Iowa Department of Ed data, it's around 61% for the schools in Iowa. If you were to take out first grade for us, I think we would have been there and maybe even a little bit higher. But because our first grade scores, were significantly lower, we know that's an area that we really want to focus on this year. So,
Joelle,
yeah.
wouldn't everyone be experiencing the same first grade issue, though?
Probably, because all kids miss that kindergarten.
Yeah, I was going to ask, have you checked with other schools to see if their first grade
I
had a
haven't
similar
looked
impact?
at that, but I would assume that them missing that part of it would be, pretty crucial for kids.
Yeah, the assumption would be it's most first grade students, right, coming off of last year.
And, we'll have the challenge, when kids are being taught remotely, that phonics piece and that phonemic awareness piece can be, challenging. So we'll have to really, kind of think about that process and those instructional practices. So, yeah.
When will you do the FAST testing again this year?
In the winter, so it's in January.
So then we'll start to get an idea if we're catching up maybe a little bit.
Well, we progress monitor all of the students every single week that are below benchmark. So we set goals for those students, and then we monitor every single week. And then in the schools, during their PLC or data days, we're looking at every single student to make sure that they're making growth along that goal line. And if they're not, after so many times, then we look at different instructional practices. And if they are, then our intent is that they will continue to make that growth of where they need to be.
Okay,
So
good.
Mm-hmm.
Joelle, does the FAST data give you information, specific information, like maybe it looked like a lot of our kids were missing the short A words or the long E words? Does it give that kind of information so that you can be more targeted, or is it still just a shotgun approach? We know our kids are missing phonetics. Let's try them all again.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be a lot better time usage if we know more specific. The better the data, the better that we can target it.
So I can, this training also what we've been using 95% in our district, but what it does is if a student is below benchmark, like what you're saying, it's just kind of an overview, but we give what's called a PASI assessment, which is a phonemic awareness assessment, and then there's also a PASI and then a PSI screener, and that's a phonics screener. My mind just went blank for a second. And so those assessments break down all of the little sub-skills within phonics instruction or phonemic awareness instruction of where those students fall. And so wherever they fall on that continuum is then where we start their instructional practices, and then we do 3-week cycles and then reassess, and
And
So
is there a math equivalent to the FAST?
There is a math assessment. I will provide, so this year will be our first year that all schools were taking the FAST math assessment, and I can provide that for you at the next meeting.
I noticed that it seems like the two higher scores for the first graders compared to the 1, 2, 3, 4 others seem to be more in a little bit lower income category level. So that may be because those families may not have had access to computers where perhaps the others did, so those kids were able to start better with some of their...
Well, there's a lot of research around, words spoken in the home, books being read to children. There's all kinds of factors that, play into that, those scores. But, really, I think at, where we would come from is just really getting into what specific skills do our kids have and build on those, and then what skills they are lacking, and then provide instruction for those. And all of our schools at the elementary level have, core instruction and Tier 2 support and Tier 3 support. So all of that is built in, with their structure for those students that need that.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. If you don't have any other questions, then we'll have Ryan give an update on transportation.
Good evening, everyone. How are you guys doing tonight? Just to kind of give you guys an update of where we're at, we're running 26 routes this year, which is the same number of routes we ran last year. We have a few more miles a day that we're putting on due to the fact that we have started to stagger our routes a little bit more than we have in the past. So we'll go out, pick up elementary school kids, deliver them to the school, then go back out for the secondary students. Whereas before we would go out, pick up everybody at once and bring them all in. So this is enabling us to manage that bus load capacity a little bit. Another thing that we've started this year that we haven't done in the past is we've assigned seats to every student on the bus regardless of the route. So before we would have, just special education routes that had assigned seats, or just elementary routes that had assigned seats. We've done that now to help with some contact tracing. If something would happen on a bus, that we can do that a little bit more readily. One of the struggles that we're having just like always is staffing. We have yet to have a day where we've had all of our staff on board due to various surgeries or sicknesses or just resignations because of health reasons. So if you guys could help spread the word that we need more drivers, we'll always do that. Obviously, we provide training for anybody who wants it, and we would help them get their CDL and the requirements necessary for that. Do you guys have any questions for how things are going so far?
My question would be, because do you usually try to keep like substitute bus drivers as well as what you have for bus drivers for that reasoning then?
Right.
And
So
we
if
not
you
have
look at
any?
my state drug test requirement, we carry 50 bus drivers.
Okay.
Okay, we only have 26 routes. So a lot of those, like, we've been using my mechanics to drive bus routes. We've been using every sub that we have available to drive bus routes. Today, we called 7. None of them could run, so we ran with a mechanic and a secretary. It's just, it happens, we make it work. But if we could increase the number of available substitutes, that would be a benefit for us.
The kids are wearing masks on the bus.
Kids are wearing masks on the bus. If they
How's
don't
that
have
going?
them, if they don't have them when they get on the bus, we have masks on the bus for them to hand out. It's going pretty well. I have very few
Good.
issues with that right now.
Brian, do you want to talk about the cleaning protocol?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So the cleaning protocol, we're using Santa Spritz for our cleaning protocol, just like every building in the district is. So we are spraying down the bus before every route and after every route, just to ensure that if somebody gets on that bus in between time, that they don't have to worry about what had happened before. So every route, every bus is getting sprayed down 4 times a day to help with cleaning protocol. If there happens to be a student that has been sent home for possible symptoms or a positive case, I myself go out and spray it with a different product, and to make sure that, and wipe down handrails and other things to make sure that we are taking the utmost care to not spread anything through the transportation department. Thank you, guys.
So more bus drivers, that's what I hear.
Yes.
Aaron, Aaron, do you have your CDL?
No.
Ryan says he can help you get it.
Okay, I'll think about it.
And now we'll do a update from food service with Alicia Eggers.
Sorry, Ryan. Hi, everyone. So, our return to learn plan for the elementary level was to feed all the kids in the classroom at the elementary level. We are still doing that, and there were some growing pains to begin with. We are offering white and chocolate milk. I want to clarify that first. So we're still doing that in the classroom, and we're providing breakfast and lunch. I will tell you that participation in August was up for breakfast from 18% to 25%. Lunch, oddly, was down from 57% down to 34%. Then we had the extension of the summer meal program that came back on September 16th. So meals are currently free for all schools, and that's in the whole country. So we see an increase in September. With breakfast, it jumps to 39.87%. Lunch is up to 49.17%. In October so far, breakfast is up to 56.37%, and lunch is at 65.86%. That does include the grab-and-go meal program that we do have at Central, that we are providing meals on Wednesday and Friday from 11 to 1, and Thursday evenings from 4 to 6:30. Though the children that we are serving there are any kids that are under 18 years of age. The hybrid kids for the days that they're not in school. Virtual kids 7 days a week, because this also includes weekends. Non-school age children. And then we are also delivering to some families that don't have transportation or aren't close enough to walk. So this week for the grab-and-go meals to pick up, we have 1,220 students, or excuse me, kids signed up for the meal program. Of the 1,220, 9% of them are under school age. With the free meal program, we have a higher reimbursement rate. It is about almost 75 cents higher than for a free student prior to this. The managers and I we've had a whole new appreciation for our staff. We've always appreciated them before, but we have been handling most of the free meal programs so that we could get procedures put in place and that sort of thing. But we've also had staff members and high school students started last week to earn Silver Cord hours, which has been very helpful because Central has stairs. Anyway, Tony has been assisting us with marketing the program, which we've been very, very grateful for. If you have an opportunity, Thursday night is the craziest, busiest. Like this Thursday, we will put out 8,120 meals. It's a lot because the students can get, like the in-person students will come for weekend meals. The virtual and underage, we will provide 7 meals each family member. The highest that we've gotten is up to about 84 for a family. We have had some milk shortages. Last week, we had about a day and a half of service of milk. The week before, we only had milk for one day because the program has been so successful. The milkman shorted us milk and we didn't order enough, but the milkman didn't bring enough of what we ordered either. The one thing about the milk company now, they are not providing any credits whatsoever. So if we need 5,000 cartons of milk this week, and we only used 4,800. We're out 200. And normally they would take that out and they manage that themselves. Well, we've gone to where we're managing that and trying to do the best we can with that. But the staff at the elementary level that are used to feeding the kids through the line really miss the kids. They kind of enjoy the work of it also, but they miss the kids, and it is more labor intensive because they're wrapping every single item where they would be just serving it onto a tray. And the same thing for the free meal program that goes out on Wednesday through Friday. Let's see, so the survey, parents can still sign up for the free meal program. The survey is online on the main page, and parents can click on free to all kids. And I talked about the pickup time. Let's see. So USDA announced that the free meals will continue through the entire school year. So the state is not announcing that yet, but I put it on Facebook today, so I figure, this is okay too. So I anticipate our participation rates to continue to go up. Let's see. I'm glad you mentioned absences though, because that affects our participation. It really does. Questions?
I do, just from the standpoint of, I'm not sure if I've ever heard anyone say specifically what kind of stuff is in the meals themselves.
Oh, the meals that
Yeah.
that are grab and goes?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I bet you Steve could tell you all about it. If he's
Ooh, good.
watching, he tells me to be quiet every night because I keep waking him up because I'm talking so much about food or. So we have personal pan pizzas, corn dogs, chicken nuggets, just a wide variety. We try to provide the wide variety so that it makes, so that they're getting variety at home too, just like the students do in class. As far as keeping foods cold, we'll put like frozen juices in with items like frozen hamburgers, that type of thing. We're packing things like the last hour, but when we're packing 8,000 meals, it's a lot. So we do write a letter every week to parents so that they know what to expect, what their meals are, how many, like if they're hybrid A, they're not going to get 7 meals for their kids. I think in the beginning that people kind of might have misunderstood that. And when I say 7 meals, that's breakfast and lunch, so it's actually 14. So in the beginning, I think people might have misunderstood that we were going to provide, 14 meals a week for each student. Well, we can't legally do that. If they're, if they have the opportunity at school, the elementary level, to eat breakfast and lunch free at school, then we can only provide the weekend meals. So now we just put a letter out every week that says, your student this week, if they're an A, they'll get 4 meals. Next week, B, it's 5 meals, whatever. So we just try to keep them informed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Alicia, I think I don't have a question, but I think I would say thank you for the great work that you and your team are doing, because I cannot imagine how hard now to really wrap every piece separate from the rest of the items. I cannot imagine how labor intensive that kind of work is. So thank you, and thanks your team too for doing
Thank you.
that.
Thank you.
I would second that. Sounds like an amazing transformation in such a short amount of time, but I know Ryan needs bus drivers. What do you need?
Oh, goodness. Well, that depends on how long we're going to serve in the classrooms. Really, it kind of does depend on that. As the weather gets colder and more sickness, I'm a little bit concerned that we are going to have to pull people from other places in the building to assist in making that happen. So staffing, and people aren't applying. It's people just aren't applying. They're just not. So, and we have fun. So that's the number one rule in this department, is to have a good time. It is true. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Alicia. And just to clarify, one of the things that you mentioned, and there was some conversation, I think, earlier this week about this, and that is that you do have an option of milk through the school district. So there was some conversation about possibly a misunderstanding of maybe only being able to have chocolate milk as an option. However, you do have an option. It's white or chocolate. There was just a misunderstanding, and
Yes.
we're supporting
We were going
all
to
cows
discontinue
of
Yeah,
that
you'd have to
produce
discontinue the
all
chocolate.
types of
Strawberry.
milk.
Cows, white cows.
That's right. That's right. So
Strawberry?
Well, they're
Used to
not
have
producing
strawberry.
strawberry this year. Sorry about that.
there you go. There you go.
Thank
And,
you.
and Alicia, thank you from, your team also was packing meals when we were still back early in the spring, delivering education, but again, in a very different way. And so this is almost old hat to you now, other than you're just doing a whole bunch more of it.
I'm glad we had that experience, and I'm in such need of a vacation that I'm having a knee replacement next Wednesday.
For vacation.
We need to reevaluate what you find as vacation time. Just saying.
We love it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then the last piece that I just want to talk about is some next steps, and we talked about this at the last meeting. We'll continue to bring this to you, just the conversation around what happens next. And, I think I talked the last time about, we asked parents, to commit to a semester for virtual. And we committed our staff to that, to providing that, which I think was the right thing to do. It just poses us some additional challenges as we roll through with our administrative team tomorrow. With principals, we'll be talking about some of those dynamics in terms of bringing staff back and what that would look like and where we would place those and how we'd manage class assignments and so on. And then also, what are our options for virtual for the parents and students who want to continue that? Because we'll have some that will need to do that. And so what does that look like moving forward? We currently are starting to use a system for some students who we've had to make changes to virtual kind of after the fact. And that's with Edgenuity. There's been some challenges with that, but we think we're maybe starting to get on the right path with that. So again, what will that virtual option look like? What would that transition? And then the last piece that I would say, it still has to be data-driven. And what I've seen from CDC and other guidelines is typically when you get below 5% of a positivity average is when you can start talking about having all students back face-to-face. We've never been below 5% since we've started. We've been right typically between 6 and 8%. And again, you have those individual days that are up and down, but when you look at that kind of average over time, we've been right consistently right there. So we really want to see those numbers go down. And as we're monitoring that, we are continuing to make plans for how we meet the needs of our staff and students long term after we get through this first semester.
Clint, do you have a time frame by which you need to make a decision for next semester? Is there a...
Yeah, we're getting closer and closer to that. That's, again, why we've been talking, we've started to have some of those conversations. We'll dig into more of that. I don't know that I have a hard date right now, but I know in terms of planning for our high school and junior high schedules, a lot of that needs to get ironed out here pretty quickly over the next, I would say by probably end of November. Terry, would that be a good, we've got to have that. So, we'll be back to talk about it. We may not have a final solution for you at the next, so in November, we'll only have that one meeting. So certainly by our December meeting, we'll have that plan ready to go.
Have we had a number of students and parents that have contacted and said they would like to come back in the semester?
Go ahead, Joel.
Yeah, I was going to say at the elementary level, probably a lot more, because it's just the parents are having to sit with the kids probably more than they had anticipated. So I think it's at the high school, the students that we've had between the junior high and high school, we've had about 30 kids that have wanted to change. And for those students, because we weren't able to accommodate them in the already classes just because they were so full, we started Edgenuity with them so that they could, we could still accommodate their needs. But I wouldn't say it's maybe as high in the junior high and high school level as it is the elementary.
Any other questions on Return to Learn? All right. Thank you to everybody who presented tonight and pulled information together. It's very helpful, and we appreciate you letting us ask all kinds of questions and dig into data. Again, it's definitely some of the most important work we're doing right now. So thank you for that. Next up on our agenda is these are our possible action items. The following items are considered to be routine by the Board of Education and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a director so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered in its normal sequence from the agenda. Those items are minutes, employment recommendations, bills and claims, special education contracts, and the FY21 Muscatine hearing interpreter contract. I think I got all of those pieces. And you do have an update, board members, from what came out on Friday. Originally, there were just a couple updates on your new hires, and that was at everyone's place. What are the wishes of the board?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as presented. Is there any discussion?
I don't really have a question about the bills and claims, but are we gonna get a calendar of, like, in the past, we've had a calendar to approve,
Ooh, okay. I didn't know that didn't go out, but I can check
and
on
maybe
that
it
as
did and
well.
I just didn't see it.
No, I haven't gotten it.
Okay,
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay.
with this is the Lisa, this is the first year of the change, right? Of the reorganizational meeting, and that. So I didn't remember. So year number 2. So right now, I think our calendar's through November for bills. Is that right?
Okay.
So, and
Gotcha.
if anybody has any questions on when you're next, Lisa or Tom, either one can help. And we always get a friendly email from Nicole as well as a reminder. So that'll be coming soon
Thank you.
to a theater near you. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And the motion carries. The next item on our agenda takes us to item G, which is to appoint a delegate for the Iowa Association of School Boards Delegate Assembly. Traditionally, the Iowa Association of School Boards would have their annual convention, I think it's the 3rd week in November. They announced about 6 weeks ago, much like the rest of the world, that event will be held virtually. The event is usually kicked off with the Iowa Association of School Boards has their reorganizational meeting, if you will, and then the priorities that we all voted on at our last meeting. Every school district has submitted those, and then they put those out for discussion to work through as far as which will be those topics that they will, which priorities they will then tackle for next year or focus on. In past years, I've done that. I'm happy to do that. I'm also happy if someone else wants to do it as well. This year, it'll be Tuesday, November 17th, and it'll be in the evening. So if you want to spend 4-ish hours virtually doing that, that's when that is. But we do need to appoint someone to represent us.
I would like to move to appoint Tammy again to represent us to the Iowa Association of School Boards Delegate.
Is there a second to that?
Well, I'll second it.
You're going to go get your CDL, remember?
Oh, yeah.
It's been moved and seconded to appoint myself, Tammy Draba, then as a delegate for the Iowa Association of School Board event for their annual meeting. Is there any discussion? You can always take a spectator, so if someone decides that they would like to be a spectator, you can certainly join in. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And the motion carries. I'm going to add a little bit of a plug. Hopefully everybody got their flyer in the mail. We talk a lot about our professional development for our staff, and we have a lot of great professional development opportunities for us as a board, and this year with it being virtual makes it even a little bit easier. I think, to work into schedules. So they've divided things up a little bit differently than they have in the past. So I would love, if anyone is interested, we could certainly attend together, socially distanced, at the board office, and still be able to attend these events together. So they have an event. They have one evening on the 10th that they call it their pre-convention workshop, and they have a couple of great speakers. One of the topics will be Leading for Equity, a practical guide for boards in your equity journey, which is certainly, I think, an area that would be of interest to us. And they have someone from the Arizona School Board Association who will also be presenting. So that's one evening. And then on the 17th, there are a couple of different events that they will host in the evening, as well as they will take their half a day on the 18th. They will have their keynote speakers. They will still have breakout sessions as well, but that will all be done virtually. One of their other keynote speakers, her name is Liz Murray, and she is an advocate for underserved youth. She's a co-founder and executive director of the Arthur Project. There was a Lifetime movie that was done about her called Homeless to Harvard. So it's her real life story, and it looks great. They have another day. The general session is on courageous leadership, and it's an Army veteran author, and educator that's presenting. And then there's another general session, how timely, how COVID-19 and the 2020 election will shape education in the next 4 years. So there's some great learning opportunities. Again, I would really, I would challenge us as a board if we could do any or some of these together, any or all, that would be great. If you let Lisa know, she's already shaking her head yes, if you're able to attend, she can get us signed up, and then I think would even be willing to make a spot for us, maybe in the Muskie room, or that we'd be able to attend those at least keynote sessions together. And I think it would provide some great topics to then discuss as a board as well, and about what that does for our work. So several of you have attended in the past when we've actually made the trek to Des Moines. I've never been disappointed by one of their general sessions. So they have some great keynotes. So that's my plug for that. Our next item is to approve a new policy, 709.7 school bus passenger restraints, and 709.7R1 school bus passenger restraints administrative regulations. And because these are, we would traditionally put these in for 3 reviews before we would approve them, but because it's administrative regulation, and the real answer is this is now required, so we need to get this in. And I'm hoping everybody has had a chance to read through that regulation, and I'm guessing that Clint or Ryan will be willing to answer any questions that anyone has.
The only question I would have for either one of you two is that at the bottom of the initial one, 709R or whatever it is, it says all adults accompanying students as bus riders are expected to utilize the lap shoulder seat belt. So are we somewhat redundant? If we're going to ask everybody, all passengers, to ride it, could we, throughout the policy, just say all passengers instead of all students, and then coming back with "and" at that last one? Wouldn't it make sense just to say all passengers on the bus have to wear a seatbelt? And that would be in both aspects of it. So,
Did the policy come to us as a template?
So we pulled this off of some
right.
requested policy. We can certainly look at making that change. I think the majority of the time it is for students. That's why they focused, but also as a reminder then, because occasionally field trips and different things, we do have adults on there and they have to wear it as well.
I just worry about that just being that one little sentence down at the very end of it, that if it's only seen as students, and we really need to be role models anyway, so if we just say everybody that's a passenger on the bus is going to need to, or coaches, I could see coaches going on a field trip or with their players, and their players need to be wearing seatbelts, but they're not wearing seatbelts. That's just not good modeling, and it's not safe. And if they're going to put the policy out there for all passengers, let's just say all passengers instead of students, and then one sentence, all adults accompanying also. Just if we say passengers all the way through, I think it's just cleaner. It's not a hill I'm going to die on, but I just think that it's cleaner.
We can make that adjustment.
Mike, was that a motion to approve with that recommended verbiage change?
It is. Now.
Did someone capture the recommended verbiage change?
So what I'll do is I'll go back in and anywhere where it's appropriate, just change it to all passengers.
Thank you.
So it's been moved to approve both of the administrative regulations with the change to all passengers.
So let me do this, where we will say all passengers. If it's specific to students, we'll say student passengers, because that's how we handle it in the administrative recommendations or administrative procedures.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve both administrative regulations, making the change where it says all adults accompanying to be student passenger and passengers throughout both documents. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And the motion carries. The next item we have on the agenda is the third and final reading on the revisions to Policy 50308, Student Complaints and Agreements. Hoping everyone has had an opportunity to review this as well. What are the wishes of the board?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the third and final reading of 50308, Student Complaints and Grievances, with the minor changes as provided. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And the motion carries. The next item up on our agenda is to approve the administration authority to seek modified supplemental amounts from the School Budget Review Committee, SBRC, of $620,020.04.
Yes.
And to provide 100% spending authority for the school year 2019-2020. Tom, this is all you, my friend.
Sure. So tonight we have two items on the table for FY20 for going back and asking for additional spending authority. There are two areas where if we do end up overspending, we're allowed to ask for SBRC authority for additional modified supplemental amounts. The first one would be LEP excess costs, limited English proficiency students, English as a second language, and there's another ELL. So all mean the same, but throughout the year, or included in the aid and levy, we get authority to spend ESL money on those students in year 1 through 5. And then in October, we will ask for additional authority for students beyond 5 years in the program. And then at the end of the year, when we close out our fiscal year, whatever is overspent, we can ask for a spending authority. So the next pages is basically the application that I printed off for you. It's all generated by our annual report, and then we plug in the amount that is overspent, and that's $620.04. I did not include a summary. I do have one here in front of me of the prior 3 years. It's very typical that that is the range that we have overspent the last several years. So I guess I have no other comments other than if you have any questions, I can try to answer them. But again, we're asking for SBRC authority for excess LEP costs.
What are the wishes of the board?
So are we just, my question is, can we combine both of them together in one?
We're going to do two separate
Or
because
just you want them separate?
in each application, and we have to show in the board minutes where the school board approved
Okay.
for each, and there's two separate applications that I'll send that to, so.
Okay, so for the first one, I will move to approve authority to seek modified supplemental amount from the SBRC of $620,020.04.
Is there a second?
A second?
It's been moved and seconded to approve the administration authority to seek the modified supplemental amount from the SBRC. Is there any other discussion? And again, Tom, we do this every year. This does not mean we've not managed our funds well. It does not mean we're in
Correct.
trouble.
Correct.
This is our insurance.
Right, it's funded through cash reserve levy, which, I mean, so we're asking now for the authority after the fact, basically, so.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion on the floor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And the motion carries.
Okay. The second item is for special education deficit. So we ended fiscal year 20 with a deficit of $726,100, or actually $760,115. The second page has a summary of FY20 compared to the last two fiscal years. And you've seen this before. It's just a summary of our special education supplement showing, you know, how much do we spend for resident students that are being served by other districts, how many students do we serve, resident students do we serve in Muscatine, and then how many do we serve from other districts is also included in lines 1 through 8. The way you would read that would be line 2, we send 9 level 1 students, 7 level 2 students, 7 level 3 students, for a total of 23 to other districts last year. We were funded for 304 level 1 students, but we actually served 331. So that's how you would read those lines. And so, and then tuition in students, 4 level 1, 3 level 2, 8, for a total of 15. Our total revenue for special education is on line 17, but if you look backwards here, the biggest change from last year is Medicaid revenue. That's federal revenue, and it's actually, we get reimbursed for Medicaid services we provide to special education students. And obviously with the shortened year, that is a big reflection on why we were down $286,000 in revenue. Transportation costs, they're about the same, but later on when I show you the summary of our transportation report, obviously we did pay all of our transportation staff through the end of the year, but we had less miles put on all of our fleet. So the cost per mile ended up being roughly, actually more than it was the prior year. So that affected how much transportation gets charged to special ed, because we know how many miles we put on our special education buses through the time that we shut down, multiply that by our transportation rate, and that's what number passes through to the special education report. We did have a small carryover from last year of $33,000 that we were able to offset our negative $760,000. So that's where $726,146.49 is what we are asking for additional spending authority for special ed next year, or for FY20. So, you know, the last time we had a special ed deficit was in FY14. Every year since then, we've managed to have a, you know, positive balance throughout those years. Last year it was negative. If you see on line 19A, we had a negative balance of $459,000, but we were able to carry over $518,000 from the prior year. So that gave us that positive balance that we didn't have to ask for additional spending authority. So, you know, I'll just, if you have any questions, can try to answer them again, but otherwise we're just asking for approval to seek the authority to for our special ed deficit. So
In an ideal world, that it's zero, right? All the money that we would get federally, we would spend on all of our students.
federal, state, and local, yeah.
That would be an ideal world, which rarely happens.
Correct.
We had Becky reviewed this a few years ago, and we saw quite a few districts spending in the negative for this particular area, because it does alleviate some pressure off of teachers and staff and others, right? So my question is, where did the money go? So now that we're spending in a deficit, where did that mainly go
So,
to?
I mean, we use our cash reserve levies, right? To, is that what you're asking about? How
I'm
did we
asking where, if we're spending now in a deficit, where's that money being spent? Additional staff?
I don't have the data on if we have additional staffing from the prior year. I don't know if anybody behind me knows that, but.
Yes, so additional staffing, paraeducators.
Yep.
Paying them more, right?
And we, thank you for saying paraeducators, because we did, we added hours to some special ed paras, and which then they qualified for health insurance. So we, you know, that's a.
I counted them in my staff
So it's
count. They were
25,
part of
so,
the staff.
Yeah, so.
And I would say too, equipment is very costly and continues
Yeah.
to grow each year.
And then if you remember, thinking forward to FY21, we did, you know, we have to think about, we have about 120,000, 140,000 salary and benefits that we're paying in stipends for, what is it, Strat 2 teachers. So, you know, it is a concern, but I mean, it's obviously, we have to provide the services. And so that's why if we overspend, we're allowed to ask for additional spending authority, so.
Do we have an idea where this gets to be too much? So, you know, I'm supportive of spending into a deficit and making sure we have what we need for our students and our staff, but do we have an idea of where that threshold is?
Yeah, I don't have a number for you, but as Tom and I were talking about it, I think, you know, it's important that we provide the students what they need to be successful. And that's part of the process, and be as efficient as we can in that. So I think every year we have to continue to review, you know, obviously there were some decisions made in the past in terms of adding additional hours to paras and providing that additional stipend for the Strat 2 behavior teachers, because they weren't getting enough of them. So those are all decisions that have, you know, impacted this. We also, just with some of the issues this year, you know, we then adjusted some of our para time because of COVID and some other pieces. So that'll have an influence and probably in future years, and things we'll have to always continue to evaluate to make sure, one, are we delivering what students need to be successful, and are we being as efficient as we can in that process?
Yeah, I'm very supportive of the investment. Just want to make sure we're getting out of the investment what we need
I
to.
understand, yeah. I mean, obviously Medicaid revenue, it's been drilled into every school district in Iowa by the Department of Ed that if you're not doing Medicaid claiming, you need to be. And we do that here. I think we do a great job. We have probably a dedicated staff member that tracks that. So, you know, that's gonna help. That'll help districts that, you know, continually to run a negative balance. And so, you know, that can be very helpful in the future, but.
Just Tom, along, kind of piggyback a little bit what Aaron had said, does it come to a point where they say, no, we can't give you X amount of dollars, you know? In other words, is there a cap area?
No.
Not that we want to
No.
get to a cap area or anything, but you know.
I mean, years ago, there were, in a time where if you had a huge swing, positive or negative, you received either a phone call or a message from the Department of Ed, and you might have, you know, that conversation. But to my knowledge, there is no cap, and that's why if you look at special education balances across the state of Iowa, you're going to see millions of dollars that districts have. So.
Understood, thank you.
What are the wishes of the board?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the authority to seek the additional modified supplemental amounts from the SBRC committee for the 2019-2020 year for special education balance in the amount of $726,146,149. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? And the motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Yep.
Our next action item is to approve the revised 2020-2021 compliance coordinators. And I think there's just been one change to the list made, if I am correct on that, Clint?
That is correct, and so this was something we'd already had put together, but then in conversation with legal counsel for the district, they recommended making that change, so that's the only revision we're bringing forward tonight.
Okay.
So that was brought by our lawyers?
Yes.
Is your HR director typically the level 1 investigator? I guess the only reason I question, because I was a level 1 investigator for the Diocese of Davenport when I was there, and they specifically wanted it to be outside of that realm. I don't know if there's a conflict of interest coming back to it, because it would go from level 1, bounded, goes to level 2. If there's an issue, then that comes back to an employment thing. So but if the lawyers are saying that, I guess I should just be quiet.
I can ask for a follow-up on that, but again, that's.
I don't know if I just don't know if it's typical. If most places have their HR director doing it, then we should probably do the same thing. But if there's not, in my own mind, I don't know, I see a possible conflict of interest. And I don't want to put Jill in a bad place.
What are the wishes of the board on this topic?
I'll make the motion to approve the revised 2020-21 compliance coordinators.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the compliance coordinator list for 2020-2021 as presented. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 And opposed? And the motion carries.
Mike, I'll do some follow-up on that.
Thanks, Clint.
That takes us to our discussion and information portion of our agenda. And up first is our student school board representatives.
So this is something I had some experience with in previous district, something I think I spoke to you as a board about in the process of transitioning here. And something I had wanted to do, a conversation after one of the last board meetings, Aaron, had mentioned that again, and it kind of jump-started that conversation with us as well. And part of that is I, thought back to the last time we were here, and our student council reps come, and then they share, and then they leave, and then we have a real dynamic conversation about return to learn or whatever that might be, and we just miss having their voice at the table. So, what we did and worked with Lisa and pulling some different materials from other districts in this state and other states, as well as some policy work on that. So it goes through and talks about, the description, what we're looking for, qualifications, how they would apply for that, the process to select and what that would look like, and expectations for those two students, one a junior and one a senior. So it's kind of ideally a 2-year term for that person. They start as a junior and work through their senior year. And they have a seat at the table, and although they're not voting members, we expect them to contribute. So they would do some of that sharing of here's what's happening at the high school, but also participate and ask questions and be engaged members of the conversation.
Clint, I went through this document and I really like it a lot, and I think it's well needed. The only question is, for the first time, I assume we will have someone as a senior. So this means the term cannot be like 2 years for just
It
the
would be
first
short,
time.
yes, for that person, it would be
But
short.
other than that, I
Yep.
think it's a great document. Thank you.
I just want to say also, I totally agree, Clint. I think that's a wonderful idea to include the student. I too, after last time and seeing them up there, I got a hold of you going, okay, where is more information, from them and or other folks about where we're at. So tonight, by bringing in even things with bus and food and everything is I thank you, for that opportunity. But I really love the idea of a student being part of our representation.
So the timeline, the first timeline, we would want this for second semester, so it would be get everything in by December, have somebody from January. Then the next, March, is that about the time that we would go for the next year?
Typically in the spring, we would
So-
start that process
Right.
again. Yeah.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
and at that point, then you would only, you would be doing that work with sophomores going
Right.
into their junior year.
Okay. The only other comment I would make is that on 6 with the Likert scale, I would, typically you want it to be an even number. When you make it an odd number, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4,
Force them
most
into
people are
it.
gonna just circle 2, because it's easy. So if you can make it 4 numbers instead of 5, you're gonna get better information, I think. Again, I'm particular, man. See those things. A great idea, though. I support it 100%.
So we will see this 2 more times. So really, we'll be looking to implement this next year.
We can do that this year, once it's approved, and we can actually start having some of the conversations and.
'Kay.
But ultimately, yeah, once this is approved, so you have it tonight. You'll have a second meeting in October, so that'd be the second reading, and we can get the third done in November.
Okay, perfect. All right. So if anybody has any other feedback or thinks of anything else specific to this, you can certainly send that to Lisa, send that to Clint. Otherwise, we'll see it 2 more times. So, great. Next up are the July and August financials. Tom, we're back to you.
All right. So presented tonight are July and August financials, most of them, and the annual transportation report for FY20. Putting off the general fund revenue and expenditures until next month because we're finalizing our line item budgets for revenues and expenses, and there's just not a whole lot of activity in the current year because we're in July and August. We have no, major revenue doesn't start till September for state aid, and October and property tax, and we're paying FY20 expenditures to salary and benefits to teachers in July and August. The timeline there, you'll see next Monday and Tuesday is our FY20 audit, and then in December, January, and February, you see a timeline of different action items that we're going to have on the agenda related to finance. The first report here is our August depository balances, and it's a comparison actually to July, so you'll notice that the thing I would notice would be, wow, we're down 3.2 million in cash, which that would make sense because, you know, our revenue kind of stopped in June for last fiscal year. We're paying last year's expenses. We don't have any additional, you know, new revenue until September. So, you know, no red flags or anything about our depository balances. The next two documents are our August and July revenue and expenditures, fund financial summaries as a comparison to last year. Then I have our expenses published as our actual expenses to published budget. So this is a new report we started in January. The left-hand column is the 4 functional categories that we are required, you know, to monitor, and which the other total expenses are really broken down by 3 different areas. So that's why I chose this year to change that up a little bit, so I don't get it in a mess here next year when we have to amend our budget. So, or if we have to. So, not, you know, we're 6.2% into the fiscal year at the end of August. So, not a lot of activity, as I stated, for the year so far. So the last 2 pages are the annual transportation report. So I gave you a comparison of the last 2 years. As the top part is the miles that we've put on our in our transportation fleet. The second part is student count, and then it goes into the revenues and expenses that just, again, pull through from our annual report. You know, obviously the miles are going to be down, as we stated earlier, because of closing down in March. And then on the back side, the very bottom, our line 25, our average cost per mile is $5.77 compared to the last 2 years of $4.71 and $4.46, and then our average cost per pupil transported. So again, a big reason for that increase, I believe, is the miles that we didn't put on. So we had less miles, but our costs kind of stayed the same as far as labor. So, you know, has been true across all school districts. So believe me, we've had discussions about that. But that's my financial report.
What questions do you have for Tom?
I just had one, Tom. I know as individuals, we received discounts on our car insurance for that time period of COVID, but it looks like our insurance costs went up.
Yeah, we wouldn't get a discount.
Nothing like that?
Right. No. It probably, which line was that there you're looking
It's
at?
11. It just jumped pretty significantly relative to the previous couple of years.
So it very well could have been because of more, sometimes, our fleet might have increased, or just that cost went up overall for across, even not just for our vehicle fleet, but for property casualty. So.
Any other questions for Tom? Tom, thank you.
Thank you.
That takes us to our announcements for upcoming events. So tomorrow, October 13th, the Riverbend Mobile Food Pantry will be at the Administration Center from 4:30 to 6 p.m. If you are someone who has already signed up for that event, you have signed up for your allotted time slot, and we'll see you there. We appreciate the volunteers who continue to help make that event so successful. October 14th, as was mentioned earlier, is a 2-hour early dismissal for staff and for our staff for professional development. Then October 19th through the 22nd will be parent-teacher conferences. And I know if you're someone with a student at the high school, you're going to receive an email that has links that you can click on it to set up a time with your teacher. Some of your high school parents are so excited about that. Thank you for that. So that's October 19th through the 22nd. Then October 22nd, there will be a 2-hour early dismissal for parent-teacher conferences. So if you do need to see a staff member in person, we will do our very best to accommodate that. It just requires a call to your student's school. October 23rd, there will be no school. It's a conference comp day. October 26th, there will be no school. That is a teacher professional development day. And October 22nd takes us to our next board meeting, which will be a working session. We'll be meeting at 6 p.m. at the Administration Center. I would also ask the board to just give some thought to IASB conference and what you may be able to commit to. If we could let Lisa know before the end of the month, that would be great. We need just a little bit of time. We'll need to publish a meeting if we're all together and make sure that we've got a place where we can socially distance and together as well. And then Lisa will also take care of getting us signed up. Are there any other announcements anyone has to make? If not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Unless y'all want to hang out.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed, and the motion carries. Thank you so much.